The 415ers are brought to you by the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network with 95.7 The Game. Marc, Grandi, Evan Giddings with you. Please download the Odyssey app, rate us, subscribe to us. Leave some comments, feedback, anything that we appreciate as always. Marc, as we move forward in the summer and close in on training camp, I guess like trying to define a theme for this season is one that outside of the quarterback position, I think is tough just because of how much not uncertainty there is. We discussed how it feels like there is an established hierarchy to the quarterbacks, but there's still question marks for all three of them just because of lack of experience or, in Sam Darnold's case, not a whole lot of great tape. Brandon Allen's only been a backup, all that stuff. But the theme and something that we've tossed around is this idea of being all in on this year. And I don't know how you define all in. To me, they do not need to be all in on this season, but I do think it is very, very important. I think there is an inflection point coming at the end of this season that will reshape this roster, not wholly, but I think drastically in some people's eyes. And so the question that we came up with was, are the 49ers entering a no excuses season? And you brought up Deebo Samuel and how his performance this season, there's no excuses for him now, as opposed to last year when he talked about getting the contract and not being fully locked in and not being here at this time this past year. So do you think the 49ers have no excuses this season not to win and go deep in the postseason?
This is a hard one because I think you look at most of the roster, you look at just about everywhere except for the quarterback position, and you think 100% yes, this is a no excuses season. San Francisco 49ers, you better get to the NFC Championship game at least. It's something they've done 3 of the last 4 years. If you're trying to win a Super Bowl, this would be a great year to do it. But then I come back to the quarterback position. And regardless of who you're starting, Evan, we spent so much time this offseason talking about it. Which quarterback should they go with? If Brock Purdy isn't healthy, is it going to be Darnold or Lance? Whatever. Throw all of that to the side. What you have in your quarterback room is relative inexperience, small sample sizes, and in the case where those small sample sizes aren't good, bad performances. So regardless of who you're playing at that quarterback position, I feel like that is a gigantic question mark still. The Niners feel very confident. At least they are making it seem like they are. They're saying outwardly they're very confident in Brock Purdy. They believe they've stumbled into the quarterback of their future, a guy that they want leading this team for perhaps a decade to come. Who knows what the future will hold, but that's what it seems like. But still, Evan, at this point, you really just don't know. I'm of the belief I think Brock Purdy is more than just a flash in the pan. Now, does that mean he's going to be an MVP candidate? No, of course not. But it doesn't seem like he's a guy who's going to just immediately fizzle out. And you know, his 8-0 run to start his career or whatever it was will be forgotten. But still, there is a question mark at that quarterback position. So I don't know exactly how to answer the question. I think for the most part, yes, this team doesn't really have room for excuses anymore, considering everything we've talked about with the all-in-ness or whatever you want to call it of this season. But I just come back to the quarterback position, and I can't quite go all in or say that it would be a disaster if the 49ers don't make the NFC Championship game, just because you are at such a disadvantage, at least on paper, at this point right now, compared to all of the other legitimate threats to win Super Bowls. Everyone else has a legitimate star at quarterback, and you're stuck in wait-and-see mode there. So it's difficult. I think for the most part, yeah, no excuses left for the 49ers, but if they fall short, it's not like I'm going to be entirely shocked or surprised considering who they have leading the team at quarterback.
So there is an excuse,
I think, but the rest of the team, the rest of the roster, absolutely not. Again, they're the second most talented roster in the NFL according to PFF. I don't think too many people would disagree or argue that all that much. Maybe a spot here or there, and that's even with relative inexperience and not much from your quarterback spot. I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy. I want to say like 95% of me's thinking, yes, no excuses. You got Kittle, you got Bosa, you got Trent Williams, you got Deebo Samuel, you got Christian McCaffrey. You have all of these incredible players, but in the most important position, there's still a question mark.
There is, but look, I am not the biggest believer in Brock Purdy as it pertains to him immediately catapulting himself into top 5 or even potentially top 10 quarterback discussions this season. But last year, he played final 8 weeks, 5 regular season games, 3 postseason games. He played like a top 15 quarterback. If you do have the second best roster in football, and prior to the NFL draft, many believed you had the best roster in football. If you are getting top half of the league quarterback play, then yes, there are no excuses. And what I mean by no excuses is you had better be in the NFC Championship game. You had better be competing for a Super Bowl. Now, I know injuries happen and some funky stuff has gone down with the 49ers in years past, but last season showed me that this team absolutely can get to the big game. They can get to the Super Bowl. This year, I expect them at least to be back in the same place they were last year in the Final Four. To me, there is no excuse for not getting there because of, number one, how good the 49ers are, and number two, the conference that they play in, and thirdly, if you want to throw in also the division that they play in. They're essentially guaranteed a playoff spot, virtue of the NFC West being not very good. And the NFC, if you look at the amount of teams that are in the top 10, top 15 throughout the entire league, the AFC is where all the talent resides. If we're looking at the Niners in the AFC, I wouldn't say they were supposed to be in the championship game. I would say there's some excuses. Their names are the Kansas City Chiefs or the Buffalo Bills or the Cincinnati Bengals. In the NFC, it's just the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're not the second best team in the NFC, I'm sorry. I can't cut you slack there.
That's fair. I hate to say it. I'll just say it though, and it pains me. I would not sleep on the Dallas Cowboys this year. They're going to be much better. They had a fantastic offseason. This is going to be a really, really good team. They will win the NFC East again, like they've been doing recently.
Last year?
Okay, well they're really
okay, sure.
They're really good. They had a fantastic offseason, great additions at places where they desperately needed them, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive backs. They're going to be really good. But I agree with you. Your point does hold. I mean, at the 3 legitimate contenders in the NFC are the 2 you mentioned, the Eagles and the 49ers. I will throw in the Cowboys there. We know it. I'm not a believer in the Minnesota Vikings, regardless, whatever. Those are the 3. But so still, I mean, if it's 2, if it's 3 legitimate contenders, the point holds. I think Seattle will give the Niners a decent run for their money in the NFC West. But the flip side to that is the 2 other teams, the Rams and the Cardinals, have the potential to be 2 of the worst teams in the league. So you are guaranteed 4 games against relatively bad teams. Those should all be wins. You could figure out the rest later. I'm with you. For the most part, really not much excuse that this team shouldn't win the NFC West, that they shouldn't win at least one playoff game, but it's just the quarterback room I can't get past just yet. Maybe 5 weeks into the regular season, Brock Purdy is killing it once again, and those fears are gone for me. And then suddenly I'm thinking 100%, no excuses. This team has to at least make the NFC Championship game. If they don't, major disappointment. This team needs to reevaluate things. Maybe I get to that point, but I just can't say I'm at that point just yet.
Yeah, I don't expect them to win the Super Bowl because so many different things that can happen that can derail that. But to me, with how good they are everywhere, and I don't know if they're going to have a better roster beyond this season. Who knows? But there are players that are aging. There are players that they have to make decisions about financially. There are players that might feel like, who knows? In Kyle Shanahan's 7th season, that there's a ceiling to this ride with the 49ers. I don't know. I just feel like this season is extremely important. Not that their window of contention closes beyond this year, but this might be the last best chance to do that. And you finally got a quarterback with some playoff experience in Brock Purdy. Winning as a rookie, tough to do. Second-year quarterbacks, however, Mark, there is a precedent for winning in your second season as quarterback. So that is not something they would have to buck, historically speaking. I just feel like, to me, the excuses beyond the Final Four, I'm not going to want to hear them at the end of the year, especially if Brock Purdy can play near the level that he did last year. If he doesn't play any better than he did last year, they got to be right there.
Well, yeah, and then the other side of this is, okay, let's say Brock Purdy struggles, maybe to the point where they even go and they put Trey Lance in, whatever the situation is. Say the quarterback costs them a trip to the NFC Championship game, whatever the reason is. You can also still say, all right, Kyle, all right, John Lynch, that's not an excuse because you also chose this path. You were thinking it was going to be Trey Lance, but you chose to try to win a Super Bowl with a quarterback on a rookie contract. That was the whole plan. That was the major idea. That's the reason why you're affording all of these contracts elsewhere. Again, it's not the quarterback they expected it to be, but it's really the same principle and the same idea. A young quarterback on a cheap contract, not making a ton of money, allowing you to load up on on talent and big contracts elsewhere. So even if Trey Lance doesn't pan out, Brock Purdy doesn't pan out, this was still the path the 49ers chose. And I guess with that in mind, if that is the reason they fall short the quarterback room, even if it didn't follow the exact path they thought it was, this is still the path and the plan that they laid out for themselves. And I guess with that in mind, you could, would not accept them using that as an excuse, and they would deserve a little bit of blame for that.
Well, that's something we can talk about on our future episodes. As that's going to wrap up this one for the 415ers podcast. Appreciate you tuning into us twice a week on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network. We are on the Odyssey app. Download, rate, subscribe to us there. That's Marc Grandi. I'm Evan Giddings. We'll be back next Tuesday. We appreciate you. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.